Hello again. I'm your host, Katie Sill, Academic Advisor at the University of Alaska's Southeast Sitka campus. I want to take a moment to say thank you to Ken at KIFW for helping us make this project possible. On this week's episode, I talk with Assistant Professor Angie Bowers and one of her students, Sarah Ebersol, all about aquaculture, mariculture, and its place in Southeast Alaskan communities. This is a hot topic that's been buzzing around the state lately, so I'm glad Angie and Sarah could teach us all a little more about it.
Like Katie said, I'm an assistant professor with the Fish Tech program at UAS here in Sitka. I teach primarily the aquaculture and mariculture courses. I worked for a nonprofit salmon enhancement aquaculture for about 10 years, and I was also the aquaculture director at the Sitka Sound Science Center for a few years before I started teaching at UAS.
And I'm Sarah. I'm originally from California, and I moved up here in August for this program, and after the program decided to stick around for a bit.
What initially attracted you to this program?
Sure. So I met Angie a couple years ago when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz. I came up here to do some research, and I learned about her profession in the aquaculture industry, and then later reconnected with her because I heard she was doing some stuff with seaweed, and I was really interested in getting into the mariculture industry but didn't really know how, and so she told me about this program, and I got super interested in it and decided to come up here.
All right, and you have a background in marine biology, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. So let's just dive right in. For those of us who don't know, and I'm including myself in this because it's a big deal up here in Southeast Alaska, but I'm in no way an expert like you guys. What is aquaculture? What is mariculture? Are they similar in any way? Are they different? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So aquaculture is the rearing of aquatic animals and the cultivation of aquatic plants, and that is basically talking about everything in freshwater and saltwater, where mariculture is specifically things that are grown in saltwater on the coasts and are primarily for food.
Did she get it right, Angie?
She got it right!
Yay! Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of seafood and fish in general that we're looking at, and it's mostly for, you were saying, food or consumption?
Yeah, so the term aquaculture kind of encompasses all things grown in water. That can even be ornamental fish, but when we're talking about mariculture, typically it's things that are grown in saltwater for food. And here in Alaska, when you hear the term aquaculture, it's usually referring to salmon. We have a lot of salmon enhancement aquaculture here, and that's when salmon are raised in the freshwater period and saltwater, and then released to enhance our commercial fisheries.
And how is that any different from, like, fish farming? I know this is a basic question for some people, but remember, I'm new.
It's a very good question, actually. In fish farming, fish are grown all the way through to harvest. So they're kept in captivity, they're fed, usually commercial fish food, whereas here we release those fish when they're still juveniles and they grow in the ocean for the majority of their life and then are caught in commercial fisheries. So they're considered wild fish.
And that makes them more attractive to consumers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I always see on menus when I'm at restaurants down south or even abroad that Alaska salmon is a selling point. There's no fish farms in Alaska, am I right?
Right. Fish farming is illegal in the state.
Okay, so learning more about aquaculture, salmon enhancement, and mariculture is really a prime thing, especially in Alaska, right?
Yeah, so it's a pretty big part of fisheries in general to kind of understand how the industry works. In our program, for instance, we offer our associate's degree. You can learn about fisheries management or focus more on the aquaculture side of things, or a little bit of both.
I like how we transitioned there a little bit. Let's explore more about how the University of Alaska's Southeast Sitka campus is a major player in the development of aquaculture and mariculture education in this region.
Yeah, so there's been recently in the state a big push to develop the mariculture industry. The salmon enhancement industry has been around since the 70s, and the UAS Sitka campus has provided education in that area for quite a while, where mariculture is kind of up and coming and kind of new. We do offer courses in mariculture. We have something called the Alaska Aquaculture Lab, where we're going to talk about both of those things, and then we do have a semester intensive program which we offer in the fall, where you learn about all types of aquaculture here in the state.
Now, what kind of things do people do in a fisheries lab course, particularly this aquaculture lab you just mentioned?
Students will come here to Sitka, and we do have housing available on the Sitka Fine Arts campus. And we'll start each day in the classroom for a little while, cover whatever it is that we're going to do that day. We will be visiting local salmon hatcheries as well as our little kelp farm that we have, and do some seaweed identification and talk about aquaculture and do some hands-on activities. I think it'll be really great.
What are some of the local fisheries that you guys work with for this program?
So here in Sitka, we work pretty closely with Northern Southeast Regional Aquaculture Association. They have 2 hatcheries here in town, as well as another on the other side of Baranof Island that we visit during the semester intensive. And then the Sitka Sound Science Center has a small salmon hatchery as well, the Sheldon Jackson hatchery, that we spend quite a bit of time at.
The intensive semester is 13 credits, so students are full-time, even more so, because there's a lot of field trips, there's a lot of hands-on work, there's a lot of activities for the students to engage in while they're here for the full semester. So students like Sarah are coming from all over the country in order to be able to have this experience. What are some of the classes that they study during that semester, Angie?
So students that are part of the semester intensive will get 3 credits in Alaska salmon culture and 3 credits in an Introduction to Mariculture course. We also learn about fish pathology, and that includes a little bit of shellfish pathology as well. And the students during the semester will also do an internship. It depends on what their interests are. We have 4 days of class, and then that frees up Fridays or the weekends for students to work on their internship. And we also work a lot on maritime skills, so students will learn small skiff operation, outboard maintenance, and some cold water survival. So by the end, they'll have all these skills that they need to go into the industry, including dry boats, tie knots, all those things that are included in fisheries and aquaculture.
Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about your internship experience?
Sure. So I did my internship with INSRA, and mainly I worked on a project where they looked at predation of salmon, and I looked at the stomach contents of different species of predators like rockfish and Pacific cod, and I looked for salmon and what percentage they were eating salmon to determine if these fish are a factor in depleting salmon returns over at Hidden Falls on the other side of the island. So that was the main thing I did, and I also worked at Medviji Hatchery for a bit, so I spawned with them and then did some fish cultivation after spawning was over, and then I also did a lot of coded wire tagging with the team out there too.
So do you feel like this set of classes prepared you to work in the industry?
Absolutely. I think it was kind of hand in hand. So as I was spawning at the VG hatchery, we would do that one day and then come back into the classroom and then learn about it, or vice versa. We would learn about it first and then go out into the field and actually get hands-on experience. So it definitely prepared me in terms of knowing the language they use out there and the terms, but also processes and why things are happening the way they are.
Well, you've mentioned a couple fisheries here, and you mentioned some key places like Hidden Falls. Where all did you guys travel to during this intensive semester?
We traveled a lot, which was amazing. Here in town, of course, we went to Medviji Hatchery and Sheldon Jackson, and then we also got to go to Hidden Falls, which was incredibly beautiful. But off of the island, we went to Ketchikan first, which was about a 5-day trip, and we got to visit Deer Mountain Hatchery out there, as well as Whitman Lake Hatchery. And then it was really cool because we got to go to our first oyster farm, which was called Hump Island Oysters, and then we went to Prince of Wales from there. We took a ferry from Ketchikan to Prince of Wales and visited another oyster farm, which was called Blue Star. We went to Juneau after that. We went to Dypack Hatchery and went to Fish and Game Mark and Tag Lab. Got to do a bunch of really interesting stuff.
We also visited Oceans, Alaska while we were in Ketchikan.
Well, you've name dropped a lot. I hope we have some of our partners listening today so that they can hear the shout out. Are all of these locations common places for students in the Applied Fisheries program where they can do their internship work or maybe find employment after the program or during the program?
Definitely. I think something that came out of our experience last fall especially was that visiting and meeting these people really opens doors for these students. Most places that we went, if not all, they would tell us when they were hiring, what positions were going to be available. So there was a lot of opportunities that came up while we were traveling.
So, Sarah, did you secure some employment after this program or as a part of this program?
I did, which was great. I'm currently working for UAS, just helping out with the small farm that we have out in front of the Science Center. And I'm also continuing some of my part-time work with Medvigi Hatchery at the moment. So I've had a lot of kind of rollovers from the semester.
Oh, it sounds great because you were mentioning before that you were really struggling to be able to break into the industry when you were still down in California, right? And coming up here, being a part of this program, getting introduced to people face to face, having the hands-on experience and being able to network with different types of hatcheries and mariculture sites really seems to have opened a lot of doors, like Angie was saying.
Yes, it really did. It was almost sometimes overwhelming at some points because there were so many job offers coming in at one time. So it was exactly what I was looking for, and I got to network with so many great people and people who have been in the industry for years. It was just amazing just to be able to meet them and show my face, and they know who I am now. So it's really incredible to be able to have that opportunity.
So, Angie, how can people find out more information about this program that Sarah and you have so beautifully articulated? And how can they, contact you to be able to indicate their interest?
So we do have a website that they can visit. If you go to aquaculturesemester.alaska.edu, there's tabs that you can click on to find information on costs and courses and a lot of other things. And there's also a tab on there that says, I'm interested. You can click on that and fill out this form and we'll get back to you right away.
Now, let's pivot a little bit. We've been talking about how this experience is available to students at UAS and how it really opens doors for them to get into the industry. Let's talk a little bit more about why this growing industry is so essential for areas in Southeast like Sitka.
So I think, especially for small coastal communities in Alaska, there's a lot of benefits to exploring this industry. It's not only a really nutritious food source, but there's a lot of benefits to growing things in the ocean, including there's environmental benefits. Kelp and shellfish both clean the water. The kelp uptakes CO2, so concerns for ocean acidification. There's a lot of research in that right now. There's economic opportunities, obviously. There's a lot of talk not only about the benefits of kelp for food, but there's also biofuels, bioplastics, nutraceuticals. I think that as we look forward, kelp is going to become, and other seaweeds, a really important part of our daily life. Yeah, so it's just all around a lot of positive things surrounding this developing industry.
Well, you and I were talking a little earlier, and you mentioned that there are specific benefits for some of the fishermen, too. Can you elaborate a little bit about how that job cycle for mariculture could play into year-round employment?
Yeah, a lot of the same skills that you need to go into mariculture are skills that commercial fishermen already have. And the timing for a lot of them is great because if you're a fisherman that focuses on catching salmon, or if that's your busy season, growing kelp especially is something that would happen in the off season. So you outplant kelp in the late fall, early winter, and then it gets harvested typically in April. So we're still learning a lot about the perfect time for this all to happen in Alaska, but that's about when it does. So it's ideal for processors that wanted to kind of get more into that because that's not their busy season. It's kind of a win-win in this area.
It also sounds like it might help with some food security and increase opportunities for our culinary partners as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I would love to see is people eat more kelp, and something that was really great to see this last fall. Students in the aquaculture semester got really into trying kelp in all kinds of different dishes and eating it and preparing it and making pickles, and they would bring it in and share, and it was really great to see.
Sarah, what is it like to cook with kelp?
It's very interesting. It was the first time I've cooked with kelp was up here, but it was really fun just going out and foraging the species that we were learning about and just kind of trying everything. It seems that if you put kelp in small quantities and everything, it's a healthy benefit and you don't taste it too much, but it is pretty tasty.
So it's kind of like kale, but from the ocean.
Pretty much, yes. There's a lot of different species that you can do different things with. Like Angie said, making pickles was really fun with bull kelp, and then you can also just saute it or put it in soups.
And for people who are looking to maybe harvest kelp but not necessarily grow it in their own farms, how would you go about harvesting or foraging for kelp?
I would recommend getting a good guidebook so that you know what you find and what you're looking for. And there's also a lot of actually really great cookbooks out there on the uses for different species and things you can do. There's a great book called Seaweeds of Alaska that has laminated pages, and the photos are great. That's a good one to take out there with you.
That's great. And I think I asked this a little earlier, but I'm not sure if we quite touched on it. But why Sitka Sound? Why Southeast Alaska? What makes it an ideal location?
So I think most small communities in Southeast and around Alaska that already have this fishing focus are good locations for mariculture, mostly because you already have the infrastructure there that you need. You don't want to put a farm that's really far away from where you are or from where you want to sell it. So communities that want aquaculture or mariculture there are ideal for its development.
Now, Sarah, if you could give tips to people who are thinking about starting a kelp farm or thinking about getting into this, what kind of advice would you want to give them?
I would say doing a program like this would be a really great way to jump into something like this, or just honestly starting conversations with people who know a little bit more about it. And I think there are a lot of resources online too, so I would just say start talking to people more about it and find resources if you're interested.
So, if someone was wanting to know more about this statewide initiative to grow mariculture, what kinds of conversations could they tune into that are happening at the statewide level?
Well, there's also a spring conference coming up that the university is putting on that's in Juneau. It's Mariculture for Alaska's Future, Status, Challenges, and Opportunities. And then also Alaska Sea Grant. If you visit their website, there's a lot. And you can learn about upcoming trainings as well.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, I'm going to be joined by Amy Samuel, our Director of Medical Assisting. So if you're interested in learning more about healthcare, tune in, and we'll talk to you again soon.